I've been eagerly anticipating the release of the Sony Xperia 1 Mark VI. Given the Sony's storied history in consumer electronics and previous successes in the smartphone market, however, after nearly a month of using it, I find myself profoundly disheartened by the experience. Here is an exhaustive review that covers every aspect of the phone, detailing where it falters. But before that, this is Safia and welcome back to my channel. If you haven't done so, please do make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. So without further ado, let's get started. Now let's talk about the build quality. As far as build quality is concerned, I felt it's not as premium as it should be. A phone at this price point should feel premium, but the Xperia 1 Mark VI does not meet that standard. Like say for example, let's talk about the material and the durability, the feel. The phone feels unexpectedly flimsy. The material used over here gives a plasticky like feel, which actually detracts from its overall perceived quality. Yes, this is slim with flat display with a light weight, which is something you don't see these days in flagship phones. But 3 years of absolutely no design changes? Are they trying to follow Apple route? And also removal of the 4K display, which according to me was a biggest selling point, and that is now gone, which still baffles me as to why. Why Sony? Why? We all know big players like Apple, Samsung, Google use the BS of not supplying a charger for making the planet green, blah 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 BS and all these things. But Sony, Sony has gone one step ahead by not even supplying a bloody USB Type-C cable, which again baffles me and which according to me is completely unacceptable. This is taking the consumers for granted, I'll tell you that for sure. Also, not to forget the top and the bottom big bezels, which I absolutely hate, which makes me feel like, hang on a minute, am I still using a phone from 2018's? And talking about the drop resistance, I haven't dared to drop it, but based on the overall build quality, I wouldn't expect it to survive even a minor drop without significant damage. Now let's talk about the camera quality. A letdown from all angles. The Sony markets Xperia 1 Mark VI as a photography powerhouse, but the actual performance doesn't live up to the hype. Let me explain. The image quality, daylight photography, in good lighting conditions, photos should ideally pop with vibrant colors with sharp details. However, the Sony 1 Mark VI produces images that are surprisingly bland. The detail is lacking, with textures appearing soft and the edges not as sharp as expected. Also, most of the pictures are in the cooler side with the blue tint, which is very disjointing. Color accuracy. Colors are a significant issue over here. The Sony 1 Mark VI images tend to have a washed out look with colors appearing muted and lifeless. This is a major disappointment for a phone in this price range. And also when talking about the dynamic range I felt is subpar. Highlights often blow out while shadows are often crushed, losing details in both bright and as well as dark areas of the image. When I talk about the low light performance, the noise levels in this phone struggle significantly. Images are plagued with noise, making them look grainy. When you compare the details and the clarity, there's noticeable loss of details in low light photography. Objects appear blurry. The camera's inability to handle low light situations is a glaring flaw in my opinion. And when you talk about the camera software, the camera app interface is poorly designed. Important features are buried deep within the menus, making them absolutely difficult to access quickly. That has been the issue with Sony interface. Well, for a person like me who is a point and shoot kind of person, this kind of interface is quite jarring and quite difficult. This is the only phone in the market to have a continuous zoom from 3.5x to 7.1x. However, the biggest disappointment for me was when I was using these zoom cameras where the zoom was not seamless. It was a bit jittery and laggy when moving from 3.5x to 7.1x, which was a major disappointment. As you can see, the pictures taken from both Sony and the Vivo X100 Ultra, you can actually see the difference in the quality of the pictures. This is where I felt like Sony, which was predominantly marketed as a photography phone, this one hugely disappointed me. You get the bluish tint which just does not give you a natural look. Yes, certain part of the pictures they look absolutely fine, but overall I felt like they were quite disappointing when you compare it with the other phones. Like in this instance, I've compared it with the Vivo X100 Ultra, so you can actually see the output yourself, like how there's a huge difference between these two phones. That is why I felt like Sony definitely needs to up the game. You can actually clearly see there's a huge difference in the quality the pictures just looks grainy and it's just not up to the mark. As I mentioned earlier, the display was a big major disappointment. Despite boosting a high resolution display, the actual experience of using the screen is less than satisfactory. For a person like me who has used Sony One Mark IV, Sony One Mark V, the previous iterations which had the 4K display, and this one not having a 4K display, yes, I was expecting that, but I had an open mind to see how good it will be. But the experience has been a kind of disappointing, especially when you talk about the brightness and the visibility. The outdoor use, the screen brightness is insufficient for comfortable use in direct sunlight. Even at maximum brightness, it is difficult to see what's on the screen outdoors. As far as the indoors, the screen is adequate but not impressive. The brightness level don't compare to other flagship devices, making it less enjoyable viewing experience. Now talking about the software and the performance, frustration over functionality. For a flagship device, the Sony One Mark VI software and performance the issues are inexcusable. This is a weird one. So let me explain. This one is equipped with the latest Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor with the stock Android-like feel. The phone feels snippy, fast in most of the apps. However, Sony seems to lag behind other manufacturers in providing timely updates and patches, leaving the device vulnerable to bugs and security issues. And when it comes to the user interface, the design, the UI feels dated and clunky. Navigating through the phone menus is not intuitive. Many settings are hidden in illogical places. When you talk about the battery life, this is where it falls awfully short. Let me explain. A modern smartphone should comfortably last a full day in a single charge, but this Xperia 1 Mark 6 disappoints here as well. I'm not saying it's bad by any means, it's just average when you compare it with any other candy bar style phones. Don't take me wrong, it still gives you an average SOT of around 7 to 8 hours with the moderate use like using web browsing, social media, messaging. The battery will still last you a whole day, but I have seen phones with a better battery life. Right? When you talk about the charging speed, the advertised fast charging is not as effective. In practice, it takes longer to charge from 0 to 100% than other flagship phones with similar features. And also with wireless charging, the wireless charging I felt was sluggish. It's more of a gimmick than a practical feature due to slow speed charging. So to conclude, what is my verdict? To tell you in a single word, I would say not worth the investment. Well, the Sony One Mark VI is a significant disappointment in almost every regard, from its lackluster camera performance and poor battery life to subpar build quality and frustrating software experience. This phone fails to deliver on the promises made by Sony. Add to this the lack of effective customer support, and it's clear that Sony One Mark VI is not worth its premium price tag. For anyone considering a new smartphone, I would strongly recommend looking elsewhere. There are many other options on the market that offer better performance, build quality, and overall user experience. Save yourself the frustration and avoid the Sony One Mark VI. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comments below, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as it helps this channel immensely. Thank you for watching, and you have a lovely day.